order had their offices and their masses and their service. They were not allowed into the choir and preceptory here. That was closed off to them. That was for the clerical and the religious. Lay brethren did all the work around the site. They were the builders, carpenters, stonemasons, herdsmen, husbandsmen, shepherds, and they kept the place going. They took the same vows as a Cistercian, but they were excused many of the offices of the day. Remember, there were 8 offices of the day over 24 hours. That works out at 1 every 3 hours, day and night. So the lay brethren were excused some of those because they were the workers. The costume I'm wearing is the costume of a Cistercian lay brother. They were allowed to wear leather belts. They possibly had a small pouch to keep items that they used in their daily work in, and they were allowed to carry tools or staffs and things like that. They were also allowed during the course of their work to speak to each other, which the true Cistercian weren't. It was a silent order. Now, moving up into the church, we come to this wall, which was built late 14th century to divide the nave and the choir. Before that, there would have been a wooden carved screen known as a reredos. Again, common you'll see in York Minster and abbeys that close off areas of churches. The stone pillars, which you see the bases of here, these are original medieval carving. Some parts have been reproduced in concrete to give the effect by the Environment and Heritage Service, but this one in particular, this is original stone. Everyone to use their imagination and imagine this area as a 2-story building. On the top story was the dormitories where the monks slept. There's also probably the library and scriptorium up there and some workshops. And in this area here, we have found evidence that there was a stair ran down from that into here. Now, it was known as a night stair. And it was so the monks could come out of their dormitory for the offices of the night and come down into the church and preceptory. And that is why the southern transept was left open into the church. And the only reason for it, if they had to close off an area, they closed off the northern one and left the stairway and access into the church from the south. Looking down towards the far wall, the area, the first area we see there is known as the day room. Monks met there first thing in the morning, at the first time of day. These are around 6 o'clock in the morning. Beside it, the area was the lavatorium, the redoitor in Norman, and that was really the washroom and the toilets. Beside it, the refectory. Everyone ate their meals there. And going out beside it, the kitchens. Before the monks went about their duties in the day, everyone met in here and they were given their duties. The brother might have been told, check the candles out, check the communion wine, check the hosts there, check the decoration of the place, check the lighting. Lay brothers would have known, well, they followed an agrarian calendar, so they knew their duties. But also punishments if you had infringed the rule. Punishments were allocated here too, and it was fairly easy to infringe the Benedictine rule of the Cistercians. You didn't have to work too hard at it. Remember, if you're a Cistercian, if you're enjoying it, you're not doing it right. But it's known as the chapter house because while that was going on, a chapter of scripture was being read. Interesting feature of the place is that from the fish ponds, which were away up here, a stream ran underneath the nave of the church, underneath here, and ran out into the lavatorium area. Now the stone structure we see the base of there with the trench in it was the actual lavatory. The stream ran into it, and anything that went down in there flushed away into the river. So it was basically a flushing toilet. Constant running water ran through that. And if you took a close look at it, you can actually see the slope in the stone at the bottom of it.
Yeah. You said there were a silent order. Where did the choir come into it?
Well, the choir, if you were singing, you weren't speaking. You were praising God.
Okay, right. So you're allowed to sing.
You were allowed to sing.
In praise, but not...
In praise, but not actually speak. The lay brethren were probably given a dispensation for that because they had to talk to each other during in the carrying out of their duties. You can imagine somebody up the top there.
Wanting a brick.
Brother Jim, made that brick.
Well, presumably a lot of land belonged to it.
All this land belonged to it. You can see the raths running round the whole area, and archaeology suggests that before the Cistercian Abbey was here, this was actually a Celtic Christian site.
So it's been a site.
There has been an ecclesiastic site here for quite a long time.
When did it finally close?
The abbey was dissolved, was put out of use in 1546 by the order of Henry VIII at the dissolution of the monasteries. And the order was that the roof be thrown down, the walls be thrown down, and the place rendered unfit for the habitation of humans. It has remained much like that today.
What's the difference then in an abbey and a monastery?
An abbey and a monastery? Not a lot. There's not a lot. An abbey is usually associated with a church, such as at York Minster or somewhere like that, whereas a monastery need not have a church attached to it. It was a living place for monks. Monasteries usually staffed by Benedictines and Franciscans and people like that. Okay. And in fact, the interesting thing is that where we see the Church of Ireland Cathedral, St. Patrick's, was the site of the Benedictine monastery in the town. They ministered to the town, but the Cistercians here on Inch were completely insular. And in fact, the structure we see right down there by the river was the guest house. Now, Inch was required, as all abbeys were and monasteries were, to provide hospitality for travellers. But they kept them, anyone that did turn up here looking hospitality was kept well away from the monastery, right down by the river there. Travel in those days would have been easier and quicker by water. The country was very heavily forested, so it was safer and quicker to travel by water. Probably that's why the guest house is right down to where the river would have been a lot higher in those days, and tidal, so it would have been open to the sea. So that is a very, very brief overview of what is left here at Inch. The name Inch, by the way, comes from a translation of the Irish Inish, which means island. And this was in the 11th century an island. It was only around the 18th century that the causeways were built and the river level dropped to allow that to be done, but it was an oxbow island, completely surrounded by water. An ideal place for a island and a insular order like the Cistercians. So thank you very much for your attention, everyone, and I hope you find that informative.